One way that you can add some awesome sauce to your live stream is by upgrading those boring, default, built-in OBS transitions with something amazing. Hi, I'm Finite Singularity, and today we're going to create a Luma Glow transition in OBS. To create this transition, we are going to use several plugins. Those plugins would be the Move plugin to make all of our animation, Source Clone, Scene as Transition to build the transition itself, Advanced Masks for our Luma mask, and finally Stroke Glow Shadow for that neat electrical effect that you see around all of the edges. Now let's hop into OBS and make it happen. Let's start with a fairly basic OBS setup. I've created a talking scene as well as a gameplay scene. And you can see they have just a simple fade transition between the two of them. So let's take that up a notch. In order to build out our Luma Glow transition, we are going to be using the plugin Scene as Transition. Now the Scene as Transition plugin, as the name implies, lets you use a scene to orchestrate all of the filters and sources and things that need to go on when you transition from one scene to another. The first thing that we need to do, however, is set up that scene. So we'll go ahead here and click the plus button, and we will add a new scene, which we will call Transition Luma Glow. Now we've got a blank scene, and we'll use this as the canvas from which we'll build up our transition. We need to add a couple of sources to this scene to represent the scene that we're transitioning from and the scene that we're transitioning to. And the Source Clone plugin makes this quite easy. So go ahead and add a new source. We'll go down to Source Clone, and we'll call this first one Previous. Now, I want my previous scene to be our talking scene. So we'll go ahead down here and select Talking. I'll uncheck audio because we don't need any audio in this transition scene. And we'll go ahead and click OK. Now we'll add another source, which will also be a source clone. And this one we will call Next. Now the next scene, this is the scene that we're transitioning to. And in this case, I'm going to select my gameplay scene. Now later on, we're going to be able to select our clone type as current and previous. So everything we build right now will just work once we finish up setting up our transition. So we'll go ahead and click OK. We have our next scene, which represents the scene that we're transitioning to, and our previous scene, which represents the scene that we're transitioning from. Now we can start building the actual transition effect. And to do this, we're going to use something called a Luma mask. Go ahead and click on your next scene and click Filters. And under your Filters screen here, add an advanced mask and call it Luma Mask. Now a Luma mask uses the luminance of a pixel or the brightness of a pixel to determine whether that pixel is shown or not. To construct a Luma mask using advanced mask, set your mask effect to alpha mask, set your mask type to source, and the source that we want to use is this exact same source. So we're applying a mask of itself to itself. So go ahead and select Next for your source. And now on our channel parameters, select luminosity. And you'll see we start to get this funny blending of our two sources. In order to get a nice defined edge that we can make, spread as our transition goes on, we want to use compression, specifically threshold compression. And what threshold compression does is it says that anything above a given luminance will show and anything below a given luminance will not, versus that kind of smooth transition we saw before we applied threshold. And so now as we slide this slider, you see we get the brightest parts showing up. And then as we keep sliding it down, the rest of our scene fills in. Now that we have our luminance mask, we need to animate that change. As always, we will use the Move plugin to do this, specifically a Move value filter, which allows us to animate the change of a field in either a source or, in this case, a filter. So we're going to call this mask on, and we know that our mask is completely on, showing our next scene when our Luma mask threshold is at 0. So let's go ahead here in our mask on filter. The filter we want to change is Luma mask. The setting that we want to change is our threshold value, and we want to set it to 0. Now we have a custom duration, and this is how long we want the transition to take. So I'm going to set this to 750 milliseconds. And in my case, I don't like easing on this effect, but you can mess around with the easing and figure out what looks best for your stream. If I go back to my luminance mask and I set this to 1, and we go ahead here and click our mask on, you will see that we do get this really nice transition to our luminance mask. Now we need to turn our mask off or reset it for the next time that we call this transition. To do this, we will right-click on mask on and duplicate it. We'll call the new one mask reset. And our mask reset, we will set our value back to 1. Only this time we will do it in 0 milliseconds, which does it instantly. You might notice that we have some little static here. That's because we actually have some pixels that are brighter than 1 in our source. We can fix that by going down to our mask multiplier here and just dropping it down to 99%. That fixes that issue where you might see some little static hanging around. So now that we have our mask on and our mask reset, we want to have our mask on, turn the mask on, wait for about 50 milliseconds, and then trigger that mask reset. So we're going to do a next move of mask reset, and now what we've got, when we turn our mask on, it's going to blink real quick, but by the time the entire mask filters in scene as transition, we are going to already have changed to the next scene, and so then it instantly resets it for the next time we want to transition. Now let's take this whole effect to the next level and add our glow effect, or what I like to call like a neon or electricity effect, to our edges. In order to do this, we are going to go to our Luma mask, and I'm just going to set our threshold value somewhere in the middle so that we can kind of see midway through the transition here. It's going to look a little bit funny. We'll close our filters down, and we are going to go ahead and add a new source, and this is where the Stroke Glow Shadow plugin comes in. We are going to add a stroke, and let's call this neon. The source that we want to stroke is our next source that we've now punched a bunch of holes into with our mask. So under source, select next, uncheck this infill, and you'll see now we get this nice stroke around all of these edges. It's going to look a little funny until you see it all in motion. Now our stroke size, we will set to 6 pixels, and for our color, I'm going to select, I want this neon blue for like a neon sign kind of an effect or an electricity effect, but that's what our glow is going to be. For our actual stroke, we're going to pick a very, very light version of this. So if you just go down vertically in the color picker here and pick something close to white and click OK, we now have our stroke. Now we have to add a glow to this stroke to really sell the effect. So we're going to click on neon, click on filters, and here we're going to add a glow filter. Now the glow filter we'll just call glow. It'll be an outer glow. I like the dual Kawase blur type over the triangular, but you can mess around and figure out what effect works best for you. I want to set this glow size to be fairly large, and then for our color, now we're going to select that like electric blue that we want. And there we go. We've got a very nice looking glow around all of our edges. Again, it looks a little weird when everything is still, but if we go ahead to our next and filters, and we reset our mask, and go ahead and click mask on, you can see we get that really nice electric, it almost looks from the game No Man's Sky when you do the scanner. So you can obviously tweak this to whatever game that you typically play in your stream, or whatever kind of look and effect you want. You can make it look like a flame with reds and oranges, or you could make it look green if you were doing something Hulk related, say. But that really takes this effect up to the next level. Now there's one more filter that we need to add, but this needs to be added to our transition Luma Glow scene itself. So go ahead and click on the scene, right click, and select filters. Now under our filters here, we are going to add a new move action in this case, and we will call it trigger. And this move action will enable a filter. So select filter enable. It's going to enable a filter on the source next, and that filter is going to be mask on. We'll also set this custom duration to 0 and leave everything else the same. So now if we go ahead and click the eyeball on our trigger filter, you see that it triggers the transition. Now, the last thing that we need to do for our transition scene is swap our stand-ins for the actual previous and next scenes that we're transitioning from and to. So go ahead and double click on your next. Your clone type is what will change. So instead of source, we want to select current scene, and we'll do the same for previous, only instead of selecting current scene, we will select previous scene. And you see here, everything goes black, and this is why we wanted to have those little stand-ins while we were developing our transition. And now we're in the home stretch. All we have to do is set up the transition itself. We'll do this in the Scene Transitions dock. If you don't see the Scene Transitions dock, you can go up to your Docs menu and enable it or disable it here. Let's scoot this over here a little bit so you all can see it, so it's not behind me. There is a plus button here that we will go ahead and click, and we will select Scene. And the transition name we want to choose here will be our Luma Glow. Note that this scene will only show up if you've installed the Scene as Transitions plugin. So now in the properties window that comes up here, for our scene, we select the transition scene that we just built. Our duration needs to be the same 750 milliseconds that we defined. And then scroll down at the bottom here, and there you can select a filter to trigger on this scene to set off the transition. And that filter is that trigger filter that we just created. So go ahead and select that, click OK. I will bring this back out here so that we can see it. And now, when we transition between, say, talking and gameplay, we get our really neat Luma Glow transition. I hope this video gave you some great ideas on how to spice up your OBS transitions. Building transitions like this can help set your stream apart from the rest, and I'd love to hear what you're building in the comments. If you like these tutorials, please hit that subscribe button, and like always, we'll see you in the next one.